Good evening to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our tropical weather outlook for September 24th, 2025. Today, we are talking about newly formed tropical storm Humberto, which is formed in the Atlantic from Invest 93L, and we're likely going to get another system to form here very shortly. As we are still tracking Invest 94L, and obviously we have Hurricane Gabrielle, which is active right now. It is really starting to look a lot like the peak of the hurricane season, as I said would happen eventually. Let's get started by taking a look at the tropical weather bulletin for today, or at least for this evening, the latest bulletin updated as of 5 o'clock. Obviously, with the formation of Tropical Storm Humberto, maximum sustained winds at 40 miles per hour, minimum central pressure at 1,008 millibars, located at 20.1 north and 54.9 west. And then we also have Hurricane Gabrielle, maximum sustained winds at 100 miles per hour. This is now beginning to weaken as it's moving into cooler waters and also going to transition into an extratropical system, but this will still be impactful towards the Azores Island where there are hurricane warnings in effect, and I'll go over that more in detail in a moment. And then we have Invest 94L, and this is really something that we're going to have to watch. I mean, we also have to watch Humberto too, especially if you are in Bermuda. But in terms of impacts to the United States, Invest 94L is really going to be the one to watch. This is going to develop much further west, probably over the Bahamas, although there's a lot of uncertainty with what is going to happen with 94L here. But some models are making this, taking this on a trajectory right into the United States, right into the East Coast, some into Florida, some out to sea. There's just a lot of uncertainty with 94L, and I'll go over the models and what they show in later on. So please stay tuned. But let's first go over Hurricane Narda here in the Eastern Pacific, and this is also churning away here in the Pacific. And this will not bring any impacts to land. This is currently Category 2, 100 mile per hour winds, minimum central pressure 976 millibars. So no need to worry about Hurricane Narda. Just want to tell you that there is a hurricane happening in the Eastern Pacific right now. Here's a satellite loop of how things are going on in the Atlantic, because that is the main focus of discussion right now, since that is where most of the activity is. I mean, we do have Hurricane Narda, but obviously things are really starting to heat up quite a bit in the Atlantic now. You can see Hurricane Gabrielle here. Definitely a little bit less defined than especially yesterday when it was a major hurricane with a eye, clear eye, a clear rounded eye. Now it's kind of being sheared off and is also, dealing with cooler sea surface temperatures here, and it's also beginning to interact and transition into a post-tropical system. But there will still be impacts to be brought to the Azores Island. In fact, as I'll show you here, the National Hurricane Center, on their key messages for Hurricane Gabrielle, the first thing they say, that Gabrielle is forecast to approach the Azores Island late on Thursday as a hurricane. A hurricane warning is in effect for all of the islands of the Azores, and hurricane conditions are likely Thursday night into Friday. Significant hurricane wind gusts are likely across portions of the Azores, even after the center passes, because this is going to increase in size quite a bit. And then beyond that, there will be storm surge. I mean, these are all typical things that happen with hurricanes, very large waves. Storm surge will be brought to the islands of the Azores, and you cannot underestimate the storm surge. It's often a killer and an impact that is very underestimated and catches a lot of people by surprise. But then after that, going to move on off here to the northeast, and then eventually the post-tropical remnants of Gabrielle will bring impacts to Europe as well, and in general swells, very large swells, to be generated by Gabrielle, and likely other storms here in the future that we're going to be tracking, including Humberto, going to churn up the water quite a bit here in the Atlantic over the next several days. and we're probably going to see a lot of churning, especially because we now have Humberto, which is the wave that you see here right now, and this was Invest 93L, and it's producing actually some pretty decent convection this afternoon. And you could also kind of see a little bit of outflow here, especially on the eastern flank of the storm. Although on the western side, still dealing with a little bit of shear as 94L, which is still 94L right now, close by. And in fact, I don't even think I went over the percentages of the storm. Still has a low chance of development in the short term right now, only at 30%, but within the next 7 days, has a high likelihood that it'll likely become our next named storm here in the Atlantic, and now that would be Imelda. So likely within the next few days here, we're going to get both Humberto and Imelda. So the tropics really is beginning to heat up quite a bit now as we head and continue in the month of September. And Humberto here going to become our next hurricane as well. This is the National Hurricane Center forecast track. By Saturday, the National Hurricane Center forecasts that this will strengthen into Hurricane Humberto, and then eventually it's going to move on off to the northwest. And Bermuda is not in the cone right now, but I suspect over the next day or so, especially as this continues off to the northwest here, Bermuda will eventually start making its way into the forecast cone. And I think Bermuda will actually have to watch out for Humberto here. Not necessarily along the East Coast. This is probably not going to get that far west, but that is because we have another system here, Invest 94L. That is the one that we're going to have to watch for the East Coast, and especially for the Bahamas here over the next several days. But Humberto is going to strengthen, likely become our next hurricane, and again, going to stay away from the East Coast, but Bermuda might have to watch for this one. This is going to pass just to the west of Bermuda, but you'd imagine that maybe we could see a little bit of track shifts over the next several days, that this might be much closer to Bermuda. So again, those in Bermuda need to watch very closely, but generally going to be on a northwesterly track and then eventually turn on off to the north and then northeast as this turns around Bermuda, and likely becoming a hurricane as it does so. Pretty much all of the intensity guidance, or most of the model plots here for intensity, indicate that this will at least become a hurricane. So obviously it makes sense that the National Hurricane Center forecasts a hurricane, but a lot of these intensity models are also hinting that this might even be another pretty decently strong hurricane, quite a few showing at least Category 2 intensity, and some even showing Category 3 intensity. So Humberto here, looking like it might be yet another strong storm to add to the list of strong storms, not only in the Atlantic, but also globally this year, especially globally compared to what we have been seeing over the last several weeks. And then we're going to have to watch Invest 94L very closely. And this is a look a little bit more up close at how it's doing right now. And there's really not much I could say in terms of what specifically could happen with this wave, because there's a lot of uncertainty. It's producing a lot of convection right now. That's definitely a difference from earlier today and yesterday, where it was kind of anemic, and there's still a lot of uncertainty about how this is organized right now. Looks like there is a low-level center, which is a little bit further to the north here, might be already kind of over Puerto Rico and in the Mona Passage, but there's clearly a much more aggressive mid-level center much further to the south. And you can see where all this convection is happening with 94L right now is much further to the south in the Caribbean. And this is just causing a whole bunch of confusion and, different scenarios with the track. And as I'll show you here with the European ensembles, there's quite a bit of uncertainty with what's going to happen with 94L here, even as it gets into the Bahamas. And I mean, most of the ensembles have this getting into the Bahamas, some of them just barely getting just north of the Caribbean islands, but you do see here that most of these ensembles get into the Bahamas. Some of them even make this a strong storm, another strong storm. I mean, most of the ensembles have Humberto definitely becoming a strong storm. I think it's more than likely that Humberto is definitely going to become our next hurricane, and probably even a pretty decently strong hurricane as well. But there's even a few ensembles that show 94L becoming strong too, and it's just going to have a whole bunch of implications on track, because if this gets stronger, maybe this will be pulled a little bit more out to sea. But then there are also some ensembles here that take 94L pretty much on a nosedive right into the East Coast. So this is really a wave that we're going to have to watch very, very closely, and it's going to be very interesting to watch how Humberto and 94L will interact with each other, because also that too, given that both of these waves will be very, very close to each other, will also have very significant impacts on track too. Not as much as an impact on Humberto, but definitely quite a bit of an impact on 94L. And I'll just show you here best way to represent that with the European. And I know that this run of the European, the 12Z, is especially getting a lot of attention because of what the full model run up to hour 360 is showing. But I'm not going to do that. My rule generally is that, especially when it comes to tropics, you don't want to look beyond 7 days, because all kinds of weird and crazy S can happen. And by S, I think you know what I mean, especially if you are a terminal cursor. If you love using profanity, I think you know what I mean. But the European is going in all kinds of crazy different directions beyond 7 days. But I do want to show you at least the 12Z run of the European, just to show the amount of uncertainty, and, you know, especially the interaction that'll happen between Humberto and 94L here. And you can see, for one thing, Humberto, well, kind of showing a little bit of a weak signature on the vorticity right now, but definitely develops as we head into tomorrow. I mean, it's already developed, so what am I even saying? But this strengthens heading into tomorrow, and will likely strengthen beyond that. And it seems like by Saturday here, the European is already showing, and I think, like the National Hurricane Center forecasts, by around Saturday, this will probably strengthen further and become a hurricane. And then this probably becomes a pretty potently strong hurricane here as we head into early next week. Passes just to the west of Bermuda, and then eventually begins to turn north, and then eventually east. Then we have 94L here on the southwestern side that develops in the Bahamas, and then looks like, at least according to the Euro, at least within the next week, Humberto gets strong enough. It seems to have an impact on the upper level pattern, in that it guides 94L out to the northeast, because you know, both of these waves are very, very close to each other, or both of these systems, they're no longer waves at this point, are very, very close to each other. So there kind of is some level of interaction that happens between the two, and then eventually both of these waves get guided out, and then let's just kind of see what happens. Oh, it is actually the European. I was almost thinking in my head for a moment that it was not the European, it was the European AI model, which I'll actually show you in a bit. But again, just want to tell you, beyond 7 days, the European does some pretty wacky stuff here in the models. But I do want to point out, it is very important, especially to see how strong that Humberto will get, because as you can see here, both of these waves definitely do develop. Well, Humberto's already developed, and then 94L develops as it gets into the Bahamas. And then it seems like the influence from Humberto here eventually tugs on 94L enough that it eventually goes out to sea. So that's one scenario that happens here with the models. Another scenario that also appears is on the European AI model. Obviously, Humberto develops, strengthens, and probably becomes a pretty potent hurricane by Monday. And then 94L develops here, but the Euro AI model kind of seems to make this develop and then quickly dive right into the Carolinas coast. and then kind of stalls there. I guess the interaction between Humberto and 94L causes 94L to kind of be stationed and stall over the Carolinas, and then it kind of emerges right back out. And this is an especially interesting scenario because that would definitely be very, very devastating, especially when it comes to the aspect of heavy rain and obviously flooding. And we know that that has a huge, huge impact. And again, flooding is the number one killer when it comes to tropical cyclones. I will always repeat that. So that is another very interesting scenario that the European AI model brings up. And then finally, the GFS, which seems like for the first time today, the GFS is now on board with showing both Humberto and 94L developing. Well, obviously, again, Humberto is already developed, but they show a tropical cyclone out of both systems instead of only developing one or the other, which, at least to me, several days ago, that seemed like what was more likely the option, but it's now starting to look like that indeed it might actually be a dual tropical cyclone situation that we're going to have to deal with here. But then, very interestingly, on the GFS, it seems like 94L doesn't become strong enough, and because of that, it ends up interacting with Humberto in a way that it eventually disintegrates, and then kind of loops around 90 Humberto in a Fujiwara effect style, and then eventually just gets completely engulfed into the system's energy. And then, all goes out to sea beyond then, and no direct impacts are brought to the east coast of the United States. So lots of scenarios here that we're going to have to watch. I showed you 3 different models with 3 different scenarios, and that pretty much what I'm telling you from that is there's a lot of uncertainty, and we're going to have to watch very, very closely here over the next several days, especially because our neck of the woods, especially if you are watching from the United States, especially along the East Coast. I know I am along the East Coast, so pretty much our neck of the woods is implicated in activity that might be coming up over the next week here. So obviously we're going to be having to watch this very, very closely, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what the models show tomorrow, but it is indeed a very interesting setup here coming up in the next week. And I kind of said that this is what was going to happen, that, again, eventually the tropics would wake up. And boy, are they waking up now. And they are certainly putting on a very interesting show, to say the least. But we're going to be watching what's going to happen here in the next week. And if you want to stay up to date, I do these videos every single day. Obviously, I did one today. I did one yesterday. I'm going to do one tomorrow. So if you want to continue to stay on top of these videos and stay on top of the tropics, please, please, please make sure to like and subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell too, so you can get whenever I upload these videos the second I click the publish button, but also the second I go live, because we're probably going to be going live eventually as well, given the situation that might be coming up here with 94L. So please make sure to do all of that. But with that being said, until then, enjoy the rest of your evening. That's going to do for now. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.